Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So I started off the video and then I heard a golden-tailed woodpecker, I think it was, calling. So I went off to try and see if I could get a picture so that I could identify it properly. And then I also heard two brown-headed parrots fly past. So I'm in Letaba camp in the Kruger, and I'm doing some in-camp birding just next to the front of the camp where you can look out onto the Letaba River. And I quickly wanted to introduce this video. So I've got the Sony 300mm F2.8. A bunch of oxpeckers flew over. So I've got the Sony 300mm f2.8 lens with the 1.4 converter mounted on my A1, and I'm busy field testing this lens for the next week or so. Sony loaned me a unit because I was coming into the Kruger and I needed a lens. My 200-600mm lens is in for repairs, and I've only got my 100-400mm. So I asked Sony if I could loan out the 300mm f2.8 for the 5 days I'm here, and then do a field test in what is the ultimate field for any wildlife lens, which is the Kruger Park. So I'm in Letaba for 2 days, and then I'm heading down to Kruger and then to Pretorioscope. Sorry, I'm distracted by all the sights and sounds inside the camp. So one of the things you should do while you in any camp in the Kruger is spend 40 minutes to an hour just walking around looking for any birds that you may get in the camp. When I got out this morning, I actually got the barred owlet. It was calling around 5 a.m. so I managed to get it just by listening carefully and going out and trying to get it. So this is just the intro video for the field test. I've been using this lens for about 2 days already, so I've got my initial views and I've got some sample images that I can share already, but I want to give it the full 5 days while I'm in the park, and I'll tell you what I like about the lens and what I don't like so much about the lens. I think while we're doing the intro, we can quickly go through the specs. Obviously, it's a 300mm lens and it's f2.8, so very wide aperture, so a very fast lens in other words. I've got it with the 1.4 teleconverter on, so that makes it a 420mm f4 equivalent lens on my full frame Sony A1. And this lens, as you can see, it's quite light. It's 1.4 kilos for the lens alone, and then with the camera body it's about 2.5 kilos. So quite a good travel lens, and for someone like me who's got a lot going on, I'm driving and shooting and doing video at the same time, this is a good lens because you can move it around very quickly and get the shots that you would otherwise miss if you're trying to move a heavy lens around. The lens is very well balanced. It tapers to the camera quite nicely, but as you can see, for the 2.8 it needs a very big front element. I think it's a 105mm front element. So I don't think you can put filters on the front, but it does have a drop-in filter at the back of the lens that you can put in. So those aren't birds. I think those are the tree squirrels that are making that sound. So if you allow me a little bit of nostalgia and to geek out a little bit, one of the first wildlife primes that I shot with was a 300mm f4 from Canon. So I got that in about 2013, and that was already 24 years old by that time. I think it was made in 1989. It was an f4 with stabilization, and I was shooting it on my Canon 70. So it made it actually a 450 f4 because of the 1.5 crop that Canons have on their crop sensor bodies. And then I would shoot it with the 1.4 teleconverter like I'm doing today to make it a 420 equivalent. And that would make it a f5.6 lens, but at 630 mils almost, because it's 450 times 1.4. And I think I shot with that combo for more than 4 years. The problem with that combo was two things. The autofocus was a bit slow because you had the 1.4 on what was an older lens, and what was not the fastest autofocusing body, but I managed to shoot a lot of portraits, a lot of bird portraits, a lot of animals, with that lens and camera combination. I think the decision to give up on that camera lens and combo came when I went to Wilderness to shoot the Neisner Taracos, I think at the end of 2017. I was in the dense forest, and the 70 after about ISO 800 is very noisy. So with that lens being f5.6, and shooting in the dense forest on, I think it was a bit overcast on that day, I was struggling to get images of the Taracos without dropping the shutter speed below 1/200. So I've mentioned it before, but there's a focal length rule where you don't shoot below the focal length of the lens that you're shooting with. Otherwise, you're going to bring in a handshake basically into the images. So shooting anything below 1/400 for this combo is going to cause a little bit of motion blur unless you put it on a beanbag. So with that 70 and 300 f4, I did get some images, but I wasn't quite happy with it because of all the noise. So I'm going to be shooting with this combo through the park as I move down to Skukuza tomorrow and then Pretorius Cop on Thursday. And I think on Thursday or Friday morning, as I exit the park, I'll give you my views on what I think about this lens and some of the sample images that we get with this lens as well. Hey guys, so we've come to Transport Dam on our way to Pretorius Cop Camp, and it's the last afternoon in the park. Tomorrow morning we'll be off down to Afsal and then out through Malalane Gate and back to Johannesburg, and we have to go and return the 300mm f2.8 that I've been shooting with this whole trip. So I'm going to give my later self a quick opportunity to go through some of the sample images and maybe say a little bit about the images that he's selected, and then we'll get through to my final thoughts on the lens. Hey guys, so it's later me. It's almost 2 full months later, and I've edited all the images and worked through all the videos and put up all the vlogs. So I wanted to quickly take you through some of the images we got and give some commentary about using the 300mm f2.8 lens. And I want to try and make it as brief as possible. If you want to check more sample images, please do go through and watch the vlog episodes. All the images except for the ones that I've highlighted were taken with the 300 and A1 combo with the 1.4 or without the 1.4. I've tried to highlight on the videos where I've used the A7 IV and then where I may have used the lens without the 1.4 converter, but for the most part it is with the 1.4 converter on. So diving straight into it, I think the very first images we got was of this red-crested Quran that was eating the seeds on the dry grass. And you'll see that the lens and camera picked up the eye of the bird and actually stuck to the eye even with the bird behind some grasses. So initially when I focused, I think the bird must have been to the side of the grass and then moved behind the grasses, but the tracking on the camera and the lens actually kept the eye in focus. And then when it got out from behind the grass, you could see that we got the bird, without the obstruction. So that's the easier shot. And the first two shots I showed were the eye obstructed, actually showed how well that the autofocus tracking picked up the eye and tracked the eye. And this was almost the very first few shots I took while in the park. Then, and this is one of the things I think I highlight when I summarize as well, I took off the 1.4 converter when I went out on a night drive. And then I got up in the morning and I heard the African barred owlet calling in the Taba camp. And I went out and tried to get it without realizing that I didn't have the 1.4 converter on. So I was shooting 300 F2.8, I think 12,800 ISO, and I was able to shoot 1/800th of a second. And you can see that, you don't get as much noise after cleaning up the image and things like that. The bird was a little higher in the tree, so the angle may not be as good. And then later in the evening, when I got back to camp, I managed to hear the barred owlet again. And this time he was a little lower in the tree, and I had the 1.4 converter on. So I was shooting 300 with the 1.4, so 420 f4. So the reach was a little bit better. However, I didn't shoot 12,800 ISO. I limited it to 6,400 ISO, and then I had to drop my shutter speed to 1/320th of a second just to get the exposure of the bird half correct. I think in camera it was still 1 1/3 stop underexposed, and I had to pull up the sliders on the exposure to get the bird exposed correctly. But I think the combination of the bird being lower and a bit closer, and with the 1.4 converter, gives you a fuller frame and more detail in the bird. Unfortunately, on this one, in the framing, there is a stick in front of the bird's chest. So, yeah, you can't always get it as you want it. Then I was sitting on the puffbacks. There's a video that I can insert where I can show you how amazed I was by the ability of the 300 to pick up these small little birds in between the branches.
So I've stopped for some sparrows, southern grey-headed sparrows, and there's a pair of puffbacks that are basically jumping around the tree, but because of all the branches, it's hard to get a clear shot of them. However, so I've got the 300mm with the 1.4 on it, shooting f4, and what I've found is that it's absolutely quick in picking up the eye compared to my 200 600, even through all of the branches. So the puffbacks are gone now, but I did manage to get a few shots.
And this is one of the images that I got. It's heavily cropped because the bird was a bit further, but it's still got enough detail. The bird is hopping off the branch it was sitting on, and it tracked the eye autofocus and kept the bird in focus. So you've got this fantastic shot of the bird suspended in mid hop. Unfortunately, it's very noisy in terms of the background. So good shot, but not the best background. I think then we spent some time in the Moiplas picnic spot. Just some of the images we got there. This yellow-billed hornbill, very close up, he was in the parking lot. So you can see how nicely the lens blurs out the background and keeps all of the detail of the subject that's in focus. Unfortunately, again, another piece of grass in front of the bird. Then sitting at the picnic spot after we spotted the Scops owl, we had some glossy starlings in and around the picnic spot, eating from the KDAC and things like that. So there was opportunity to actually find a bird that was perched very nicely, and then get some shots off, and also then play around with the background. So move around because the birds actually were quite comfortable with the presence of all the humans in the picnic spot. So we could move around, play around with the backgrounds, play around with the bokeh, uh, and with the F4 um, off the lens, and with the 1.4 converter on, you can see how nicely it blurs the background. And I think this last image is one of my favorites. The birdie's got good eye contact. It's looking at the camera. The background is nice and creamy, and yeah, a generally pleasing image that one is. And then at the Mopani camp, we also got a gray-headed bushite. So initially, he was in between all the branches, and this image I had to manual focus to get the focus on. And then he popped up behind me, and luckily there was other birders there, and they quickly said he's behind us, and we could get a few more better shots, still in between the branches, but without the need to manual focus because the eye autofocus on the bird was quite good. Then I think moving away a little bit from the birds themselves, some bigger subjects. Um, we got this elephant a little bit south of Mopani camp. It was eating some grass, and as you can see, given the right composition, you can get some of the bigger animals. I included this picture of this tree squirrel mostly because it was a backlit image, and you can see that there's no visible flaring or any lens issues with the light coming from behind the subject, and I was still able to capture a lot of detail in the subject. This is obviously not a fully backlit image. There were very few that I did get to capture because when we're out in the field, we're not really shooting against the light. We find an angle to shoot away from the light. And then this lion cub that was on the buffalo kill that we got, the whole pride almost, but the lion cub was out in the open a little bit more, and switching to animal eye autofocus could pick up the focus of the lion cub's eyes as well. Didn't get the opportunity to shoot much larger animals. This oxpecker on a giraffe, you can see it's a giraffe, but I think what you highlight more in this picture a little bit is that the amount of detail, it's already cropped in a lot, but the oxpecker is looking at a fly. There were a lot of flies on the giraffe, and you can see the fly in the picture. And then the giraffe was standing in the shade, and the trees behind it gave some nice bokeh as well. We had the hyenas walking on the last morning, and one of the things I would caution against is that you have to watch your composition and watch for cropping, especially with the animals with the fixed 300 focal length. So there were a couple images previous to this one where I cropped his toes out because I wasn't being careful about, making sure that he was all into the photo. But at least we got this one. He's walking away, so not the best sort of composition, but we got a shot. And then another shot of elephants drinking at the waterhole. This is almost quite a big herd, but given the distance they were away, you could frame and compose and get a shot with multiple animals in the shot as well. Then one of the shots I wanted to get is of a helmeted shrike. So this image of I think it is a juvenile white-crested helmet shrike that was hunting inside Lataba camp. It was hawking insects that were underneath the leaves. So you can see it's looking up, ready to launch. So the autofocus picked it up nicely, even though there were other branches and leaves around. And then just before it got the insect, got the next shot as well. Position on the bird isn't the greatest on this shot, so I do prefer the previous shot as well. One of my favorite shots of the trip as well. While we were still at Lataba camp, I was filming video, a time lapse of the sunset, and a group of, I think, Natal's Perfall came running past. So very little time to react. So this image, without the editing, is shot at, again, f4, ISO 6400, but 1/1000th of a second. So it's about nearly 2.5 or 2.7 stops underexposed. And this is the edited image after pulling up the exposure slider, doing noise reduction and that sort of thing. You can see that it retains quite a bit of detail, and that's a combination of the lens ability to shoot in lower light, the lens ability to retain detail and sharpness, and then paired with the A1, which is quite a beast in low light, and the noise reduction capabilities, both in DxO and Lightroom or Photoshop. You can get an image that's still usable. I had to crop out most of the bird that's in the bottom left corner, but yeah, it's a story, and you've captured a image with a story in it. I think one of the favorite images I got was this lilac breasted roller on the morning we were transitioning from Latava to Oliphant's camp. So I had to shoot portrait because the bird's rackets, or the pointy bit of the tail, was getting cut out. So it wasn't, it was cropping the bird basically in horizontal. So portrait, you could put the bird in, and I love the way the colors and the contrast between the bird's colors and the yellow leaves actually came through. I think this is a russet bush willow, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll need to double check that. And then, yeah, I got a little bit closer, and then you can see the detail of the feathers in the bird's neck and on the bird's forehead. But because you can't zoom out, you're going to crop the bird, and you're going to have a part of the body that's cropped out. I tried to capture it with the 100-400 on the A7 IV, but unfortunately, I couldn't get the colors to match exactly. So you'll see that the colors on the A7 IV and the 100-400 look a little bit off compared to the A1 and the 300 million. So, and that lilac breasted roller is one of my favorite images as well. Then we've got, I think, the last few images. Again, a starling, but this is a greater blue-eared starling. It's in the shade, so there's contrast between the bird's dark plumage and then the light shining through on the sand behind it. But shooting at f4, you can get the bird and then blur out the background nicely. So I left in some of the leaves and things on the ground, because that's the environment. Otherwise, it starts looking too barren almost. Another shot of just how well the lens blurs out the background. Same greater blue-eared starling on a fence post at the Chakwane picnic spot. Um, Here's an image where the shallow depth of field actually was disadvantaged. So I did see these two birds standing off against each other, and I pushed the f-stop to f5.6, so it wasn't wide open. And as you can see, it still focuses on the bird eye on the left, and then the bird on the right is immediately lost in the depth of field. So it's not on the same plane as the other bird, and therefore you can see it's softer than the other bird as well. But the feathers on the back are have quite a bit of detail because they're in the same plane as the first bird and the focus. And then another blue-eared starling, again with a lot of um, lighter and darker areas behind it. So the lens once again blurring out the background. The last couple images are of I wanted to show are this saddlebull stork, which is taken around midday. So it would have been just about 11:30 or so, as I was heading back from Lower Sabi to Skukuza. And this is the harsh midday light and underexposing the bird, which is also very high contrast. It's got white and black on it, and red. Um, you have to underexpose the bird, and then it gives you an image that's usable, but you can still see is quite harsh lighting. But the lens and camera combo did well there, just to capture all the contrast in the picture. This brown-hooded kingfisher we saw at Lake Panic. Also around midday, I think this would have been closer to 1:30, 2 o'clock in the day. So again, a bit harsh lighting, but you can tone down the harshness by underexposing a little bit, and you can see the nice bokeh of the little bits of water that's behind this bird as it's sitting on its perch. I think then lastly, I wanted to quickly highlight, the video capabilities. So this first video is just of a uh, African fish eagle. I was shooting through the passenger side window because the bird was on my left side. So I'm not going to stabilize this video. I'm just going to show, how well it managed to keep stable and then also keep the bird in focus, even though it was a busier background and there's lots of sticks and branches around the eagle itself. The next video was shot in Chokwane picnic spot again, great blue-eared starlings again, and you'll see as this starling hops around and moves around in between the shadow and the light on the picnic spot ground, the lens sometimes does lose focus. And this is not purely on the lens. The A1 does not have bird eye autofocus, but if you have a camera that does have the bird eye autofocus and the AI autofocus, it may keep to the subject a little bit better. The next video is there's three different birds in this video. So I start off shooting the blacksmith lapwing, and then I saw a jacana come into frame, and then a hammerkop. And you'll see I'm hand holding this, but with the support of the hide or handrest. So the video is a bit more stable, but you'll see it moves around a little bit as well. Still at the Lake Panic hide, we got this African jacana moving around, and he also moved, in and out of focus because the depth of field at f4 isn't the greatest. So when he moves out of focus, the lens will have to adjust and pick him up quite quickly again. So yeah, it was quite a challenge to um, keep the birds in focus because the A1 doesn't have that eye autofocus. Then the last video is of a lilac-breasted roller just sitting quite close to the car out the driver's side window. And this one was on the beanbag, so it was quite stable as well. So, there's no need to stabilize that video. The movement is because of the wind, that it was a very windy morning. I guess then, if we're talking about video and focus, it would be remiss of me not to speak about the last opportunity that I got, where we got these lions that were mating, honeymoon couple of lions. And because of the branches in front of the lions, the autofocus wasn't picking up the lion moving around. So you'll see the female initiates a mating and then the male responds, but the camera does not pick up focus for whatever reason. And then the female goes and sits out in the open, and I move and I get the lions in frame, but again, the the focus doesn't pick up, and you'll hear me say focus and then the lens focus. So it's good when you command the lens to focus and it does focus. But yeah, I was a bit let down there by the A1 and the 300 combination. I think that was a little bit disappointing not to get that whole sequence, in focus. But yeah, we'll have to count that as a miss and try on the next one. So I'll hand you back to my earlier self and let him give you his final thoughts on the lens.
Okay, thanks, later self. So I hope the sample images actually showed you what you wanted to see about the lens. So this part of the review is, how I felt using the lens and what do I think of the lens just from the back of the camera image reviews. So to the question of whether I would buy this lens myself personally as a wildlife and maybe bird photography lens, the short answer is yes. The long answer is I'm trying to make a plan so that I can get it bought. So that's a yes as well. As you can see, one of the big advantages is the size and the weight of the lens. So I'm holding it with my left hand and I can, shoot out the passenger window quite comfortably. I can bring it around and shoot out the driver's side window without too much of strain. I think this is the harder side to shoot photos and videos from, but oftentimes this is the side that the sightings will be on, so you have to swing yourself around. And with a bigger lens, if you are the driver like how I am and you're driving around, the steering wheel gets in the way and just maneuvering the lens is difficult. I think the other advantage is my front seat, which I'll show you quickly. Maybe I should use the other camera so that I don't lose this angle. So my front seat is a mess. There's a map, there's binos, there's two cameras, the cell phone, charging cables, coffee cup, Edos for my heartburn, and then my hat and the extender cover, jerseys, and there's the lens case there as well. So yeah, normally this front seat is a bit of a mess, and actually getting the camera to shoot
is quick when it's a small unit like that. It doesn't get tangled up in any of the straps or any of the cords and stuff like that. So I think the size and the maneuverability is definitely an advantage when you're out driving like I do, making content, taking video with one camera, taking photos with the other camera. So and then the GoPro is dying half the time and you need to charge it in between and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on usually, and having a lens that is small and easy to move around is definitely an advantage. Then I think shooting with the lens and looking at some of the images, I would have gone through the images, the sample images already, but I found that it's very sharp and it picks up the subject very quickly, and sometimes even through the branches and obstructions that may be in the way. So when you're out in the bush and you don't have clean shots, and there are birds or small animals that are in the thick of the bush, having a camera that can actually autofocus and autofocus quickly is extremely good. I've not had to shift to manual focus on this lens. I don't think more than 2 times the trip. And to actually shoot manual focus, it's got the focus ring on here, which is quite useful. It's normally where the zoom ring is, and you have to figure out, where the zoom is and where the focus is. But with the prime, you've only got the focus, so it's very quick to actually manually focus if you need to manually focus. I've not find many instances where you need to do that. I think then carrying it around, I think this foot is a bit small. My hands are fat, so I can only fit in 2 fingers on that grip. I don't know how clear this is coming out, but I can only fit 2 fingers on there, and then the pinky and the index finger are loose to hang around. I found it more comfortable to carry like this, because then it feels it's hooked in and it can't slip out. So I was carrying it like this. Don't mind my dry hands. Lotion is required. And then I've been shooting with the 1.4 converter. Turn it around so you can maybe see the 1.4. So I've been shooting with that 1.4 converter, and it makes it a f4 420mm lens. And I think that extra length is a requirement. I took the 1.4 converter off the first night when I went on a night drive to be able to shoot F2.8, but we didn't see anything. And then I forgot to put it back on the next morning. So when I was shooting the barred owlet, I was shooting 300 f2.8, which was an advantage because you can get a nice bright image in camera with ISO of about either 6400 or 12800. I think it was 12800. So you get a bright image in camera. The problem is you still need to crop, and cropping then means you lose some detail, and you still need to do noise recovery and things like that. So maybe with the 1.4 and shooting f4, it's a bit better, because then you don't need to crop as much, so you don't lose as much detail digitally. I think I have been shooting with my 100-400 while the 200-600 is in the shop, so I've gotten used to that 400mm focal length. And there's some shots where you can't get a shot, and you just accept that that's a shot that you're not going to get. So what I've been doing is I use PJ's A7 IV, which I've been using for video, and in video mode that has eye autofocus, and it also has a 1.5 times crop. So the 100-400 is the equivalent of a 150 to 600 on the A7 IV when it's in video mode. When it's in photo mode, it's back to full frame. Oh, and then I think talking about video, just I've been doing a lot of handheld videos, so either resting the camera like this or using my seat and shooting, like this, using your face as the third stabilization point. And the handheld video, I will have to obviously see, but it seems very stable when I'm not breathing too heavily and moving around and my arms getting a little bit tired. Holding it up for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, it's 2.5 kilos with the camera body on. So yeah, holding it up and steady for longer than 30 seconds is a challenge in itself. But the video, from what I can see off the back of the camera while I'm taking the video, the autofocus in the video is quite snappy. It doesn't have a bird eye autofocus, and I've been taking a lot of bird videos, and because I've got the focus peaking on, I can see what's in focus and what's not in focus. So if the video loses focus, I can see that it's lost focus, but it snaps back very quickly and gets the focus again. So not unhappy with the video, and I think better than the 200-600 in terms of the stabilization. And because it's f4, you can shoot in lower light, and you can shoot with f4, and you can get some good clean or cleaner backgrounds because you're blurring the background. I think one of the things, speaking about the f-stop, is with the 100-400 as well as the 200-600, you're always struggling for light, so you pushing that aperture open, fully open, almost 99%, 98% of the time. With this one, because you've got the f4, sometimes you've got too much light and you have too shallow depth of field. So there have been instances where I've had to push the f-stop wider open just so that I don't blur out a second subject in the image too much. So I was sitting at the Chokwane picnic spot yesterday and shooting greater blue-eared starlings, and that was one thing that I found, that I had to push the f-stop every so often just to make sure that I've got focus. I was also shooting very small birds, Marico sunbirds, in a sausage tree, and the sausage tree had flowers, so the sunbird was flitting around. So in order to try and get it in focus and try and get a little bit more depth of field, I was shooting at f5.6 and I think even f6.3 at some stage, just to make sure that we could get the bird in focus rather than blow out the background. It was already a very busy background. I think for larger wildlife, this is a brilliant lens. I think you can even get away without the 1.4. You can shoot f2.8, so it will be a beast in low light situations. I haven't had too many low light opportunities because I only went on the night drive the first night, and we saw one spring hare, I think. All the elephants, but one spring hare. So I think the question becomes, with the 300 being so good and half the price of the 400, and still tack sharp with the 1.4 converter at 420, what is the need for the 400 f2.8? And I think to answer that, if you are using that 400 f2.8 with the teleconverter, you're getting 560 f4, so it gives you that versatility of having a 400mm lens as well as almost 600 mil lens, at f4. It's a bit bigger, it's a bit more unwieldy. I used PJ's one. It's a bit heavier as well, so you will get tired, and birds in flight become a little bit more of a challenge. The fact that Sony doesn't have a built-in teleconverter means that, with the 400, if you're shooting portraits, you may want to do the 1.4, and then if you're shooting birds in flight, the 400 may in itself be too much, and then you need to take the 1.4 out. So, there are going to be instances where you're going to either be too long, or you were shooting birds in flight and you go back to shooting portraits, and then you're too short. So, there's a possible advantages and disadvantages of that. Whether you buy the 400 or the 300, for most of us is not a real question, because that 400 mil lens is 11,999. This is $6,000. So the choice, I think, boils down to whether you buy this lens and travel more with that extra 120,000 that you save, rands that is, or whether you buy the 400 and then you save up for your travels. But my financial advisor says that that's poor maths, because you never had the money for the 400 in the first place. So the comparison, I think, for me would be whether, if this lens was available, let's say 3 years ago, whether I'd get this over the 200 600, or if this lens was available 6 years ago, would I get this over the 100 400. I think the 100 400 is a bit old now, so the question becomes less of an issue. I think you just save up and you buy this lens, and you buy the teleconverter when you get a special or when you get a demo. The 200 600, I think, is still the entry-level lens for birding. It still gives you more versatility as you're learning your craft, and you haven't committed to 130,000 rand, which is the price of this lens without the teleconverter. And if you then feel that you are being limited by the 200 600 mil lens, then you can save up and look to buy this. I've shot this with the 2x converter at Marievale just briefly in the morning, and PJ may have some images that we can put up for the 2x converter as well. It is sharp, but what I've found is with this 1.4x converter, the autofocus is still super fast, whereas compared to the 2x converter, the pickup on the autofocus is a bit slower. But if you've got your tracking on, it tracks very well birds in flight, on that 2x converter, 600 mil equivalent. And that's something to bear in mind as well. So if you put a 2x converter on this, you've got a 600 mil f 5.6 for work in a hide, or where you've got a setup where the birds are coming in and you don't perhaps need as fast autofocus, or autofocus that needs to go through branches and things like that. Then that 600 f5.6 at the cost of the 2x converter, which is I think about 12,000 rand, is an extra lens you can have in your bag just for the one lens. So this lens gives you basically 3 lenses in your bag. It gives you the 300 naked, almost, without a teleconverter. The one with the 1.4, it gives you a 400 f4 or 420 f4, and then with the 2x converter, it gives you a 600 f5.6. So versatility, lightweight, take it everywhere, And because you're saving that 120,000 with that poor maths that I did on the 400mm, you're going to go more places as well, because now you've got money to travel with. So I think, to wrap up, yeah, this is definitely one I need to start saving for. Need to trade in my two other lenses and try to get one either cheap or on demo. And hopefully soon, this is all I'll be shooting with. So I think that's a wrap from sunny Transport Dam. I'm going to head into camp now and set up my tent and uh, finish off the trip tomorrow morning. Um, if you looking for a perfect wildlife lens, if you're the type of shooter I am, where you're shooting mixed birds as well as big animals, and you're out in a park that's busy with some sightings that are close and some sightings that are further off, this is a good lens to add to your bag.